Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Ways in Which, where I talk about academia, all things graduate school. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about advice that I would give incoming graduate students. So I hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this video is for incoming first-year graduate students. Either you just got accepted, congratulations, or you're already in your first year.
And by the way, these are in no particular order.
So my first piece of advice would be to really practice and own your elevator pitch. What is your elevator pitch? This is sort of the short speech that you'll make, multiple iterations of this throughout your grad career.
At the beginning of classes, when you meet a new faculty member, or when you meet other graduate students,
they might ask you, what are your areas of interest, of research? It'll usually include your name, pronouns. Sometimes people like to include what year they are in graduate school. I personally don't care for it. Depending on the class, you'll mention what department you're in, and then you'll talk a little bit about your research interests. Now this could be as broad or as narrow as you really want to be. Maybe you're feeling generous that day and you want to share a lot of your research, and other days you just want to get it over with and keep it pushing, right? So for example,
hi, my name is Joy Garza. My pronouns are she, her. I am a PhD student in the linguistics department. My areas of research are language and affect, embodiment, especially in online spaces.
Or maybe some other day,
right now my dissertation research is looking at Korean popular culture and online discourses.
Or you might just share your general areas.
My name is Joy Garza. I'm a PhD student in linguistics. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a sociocultural linguist with a focus on race and gender.
So multiple iterations of the same thing, but really practice it, get it down, and realize that your elevator pitch will change. The important thing, I think, is to make sure that it's clear and succinct and that you're not just rambling for a while. So my second piece of advice would be to have a broader vision for your academic career. Now, what do I mean by that? What do you want to achieve in the 5, 6, 7, 8 years that you are investing into your graduate career? What other kinds of experiences and skills do you want to acquire? Do you want to learn how to code? Do you want to learn how to be a better grant writer, a better writer, period? Do you want to gain experience teaching as a mentor? Do you want to work with affinity organizations? What about local nonprofit? Do you want to take up rock climbing or knitting? Seriously, maybe skills that you already have, but you want to upkeep in graduate school. It doesn't have to be purely research, purely academic. Find what resources there are at your local institution and really take advantage of them. My third piece of advice that is related to having that broader vision is understanding your program's timeline. What are the different milestones and the requirements for your specific program? Do you have a qualifying paper? Do you have multiple qualifying papers? Do you have comprehensive exams? Are they oral exams? Are they written exams? A combination? And what are the department's normative timeline for those milestones? So for example, in my program, we have a
master's thesis, followed by a qualifying paper, also known as a publishable, followed by oral exams.
But you don't just complete one, check the box, and then move on to the other. There is some overlap. While you're working on one milestone, you should be thinking about the next milestone. This is super important because you don't want to be caught in a place where you're behind, or your department is reprimanding you, or you're on academic probation. This could lead to drama in your department, spikes of anxiety. It could even affect your funding. So my fourth piece of advice is related to funding. You should have at least a 5-year plan for your funding. Now this is going to vary a little bit by department. Obviously coming from a humanities department, this will look very different from a STEM department. How will you fund those 5 years? I highly warn against entering a program where there is no funding. I would not go into insane amounts of debt for a PhD. I just don't think it's worth it. And I think it's the ethical thing to do for programs to work with you to find that funding. Just to give you an example, my funding package was a 5-year plan. 3 of those years were covered by TA-ships, meaning that I was guaranteed a position as a TA for the department. And then 2 of those years would be covered by a fellowship. For me, that was a great package because I wanted that time to work on my own research. I also really wanted to continue to foster my experience teaching. I'll probably do a separate video all about money in graduate school, but just make sure that you have a plan for how you're going to pay for graduate school. I would not bank on the idea of getting fellowships once you're in grad school. Of course, we all are applying for fellowships and grants during our time in graduate school, but I would not assume that you're gonna get those before you've made the decision to be in grad school. In other words, I wouldn't solely depend on those fellowships and grants because a lot of them are extremely competitive. So my fifth piece of advice is to learn how to set boundaries. I can't stress enough the importance of this. When you're in grad school, you're going to feel a lot of push and pull from a lot of different
people and events and things trying to fill up your schedule.
I would really be careful about how much you commit to, especially in your first and even your second year. For example, I would be really careful with how much you volunteer, aka free labor. Oftentimes, these opportunities to volunteer will be presented as a line on your CV. And you have to be really judicious. Is that line on your CV worth it at this stage of your graduate career? Is it an opportunity that will come back in your second year, third year, fourth year? You might consider taking it on then when you have a better grasp of how things work. Also, in terms of setting boundaries, I think this is also really important in order to mitigate the factors that contribute to imposter syndrome. Mike Mena has an excellent video on imposter syndrome on his channel. I highly encourage you to go check it out. For me, oftentimes that imposter syndrome was caused by environment or who I surrounded myself with. I had to learn to be really smart with how much time I spent in those environments or with certain people. In your first year, you're gonna have a lot of requirements.
Classes, research, meeting with your advisor, departmental events, right?
Are you making time for yourself? Are you making time for the people you love? Are you making time to enjoy the area that you just moved to? Also tied to the idea of setting boundaries is asking yourself, what are the sacrifices that you are completely unwilling to make? What are your limitations? For example, for me, even though my program was in Santa Barbara, I was living in LA, my whole family is in LA, my partner's job was here, so one of the sacrifices that I was unwilling to make was moving to Santa Barbara. That's a pretty drastic one. I realize that that might not be feasible for a lot of you, but it's worth asking yourself, what are the sacrifices I'm unwilling to make? Do you want to work out a few times a week? Do you want to make sure that you are seeing a therapist every week? What are the things that you're unwilling to compromise on? My fifth piece of advice is to find your mentors, but also to have a contingency plan. What do I mean by that? So oftentimes in graduate school, you come in knowing that you want to work with a specific professor, but I would warn against putting all your eggs in one basket. What happens if this person isn't supportive of your research? What happens if your personalities clash? What if you change your areas of research? Will this person still be able to advise you in a way that you like? So by a contingency plan, I really mean to be open to the possibility of working with other faculty members. You'll probably want to look for a faculty member or another academic mentor in your own department, but also be open to going to other departments to look for that mentor. You're going to have different mentors for different things. You might have a mentor for your immediate area of research. You might just have a mentor based on how much your interests align outside of research. So for me, I have mentors in multiple departments because of my academic but also non-academic and more activist related roles that I've had on campus. And so I've had the privilege of working with professors not only in linguistics but also in
Asian American studies and sociology, Chicano studies.
I'll do a whole nother video on just mentors and mentorship, but be open to having mentors in other departments. And the last piece of advice that I would give is to find your people. Who are the people that you really vibe with, that you really get along with, that are not just great people, but that are also stimulating you intellectually, that are really investing in you as a person and not just as an academic? Who are the people that make you feel good about yourself? What are the relationships that you want to keep up in graduate school? For me, this has been the single most important thing in graduate school. I was lucky enough to meet some of my best friends in my first and second years, and those relationships have really sustained me throughout my academic career.
They're the friends that I cry with, that I laugh with, that I go grab a drink with, but they're also the friends that read my abstracts, that read my manuscript, that I conference with.
And if you're struggling to find meaningful relationships in your own department, I highly suggest looking at affinity groups at your university. And these might be identity-based organizations, they may be cause-based organizations. What are the issues that you really care about, and how can you build meaningful relationships around those issues during your time in graduate school? I think I covered all the ground that I wanted to cover. The number one piece of advice I think I got from professors was to start a reference manager. So I use Zotero, there's Mendeley, EndNote, but don't just download it and start storing a bunch of PDFs. Actually learn how to use it. Okay, and last but definitely not least, start building your professional network now. Who are the professors whose works get you really excited and made you want to pursue a PhD in the first place? Who do you follow on social media? What are the conversations that you want to be a part of? Figure out where those professors are. If they're in your current department, great. If not, figure out where they're going to be giving talks. Are they going to be giving a keynote speech at a conference? What are the flagship conferences for your field? Really start to figure that out now, because those networks will go a really long way during your career in grad school and beyond. I hope that was useful. Please let me know in the comments below if there are additional pieces of advice that you would add, and I hope to see you in the next video. All right, take care. Bye.